Before we jump into the amazing editor component, let's do a little bit of setup. So I'm going to come in here and make a div and then give it a class equal to column, and we'll say q-gutter-large. This basically means that everything inside of this div is going to be going up and down like a column, and there's going to be a gutter between all of those items. But you'll see what I mean in a moment. So now let's say q-editor to have a look at what this component looks like. And there it is. How cool is that? All of this functionality just by saying q-editor. Now, of course, we're going to want to model something. So let's say content, and then we'll have to come down here, yank out ref, all the usual good stuff. We'll say const content is equal to a reference, which will be an empty string by default. Then we'll expose that on the template, like so. Save it. And there we go. Now we can say my content, and that's being modeled in the background. Now, so that we can see the results of this, I'm going to come down here and say q-card, and then say here q-card-section, and inside of that section, we'll just whack that content directly in there. Copy, paste. And I might just lay this out a little bit nicer. Save it, and there we go. That's the result. And if I type something in here, the content, notice that everything inside of here is basically giving us the pure result. So you can see when I put bold in there, we get that bold tag as well. Now, obviously, this probably isn't what you want when you're spitting out the result of your QEditor content. So let's have a look at how we would actually use the bold tag here and the italic tag and all the other cool stuff we've got available to us. So I'm going to copy that, paste it down here, and then in this QCard section, I'm going to remove the content and instead add v-html is equal to the content. Save it. Now let's give this a try. Bold this, and then let's see if we can make that bold. And notice that it works down here. So why are we getting this little yellow squiggly line? It says v-html directive can lead to XSS attack. And that means cross-site scripting attacks. I'm not going to go in depth into what that actually means. However, just know that when you're storing this content on the back end, it is very, very important that you clean that content. That basically means that you're stripping out any script tags and any stuff that shouldn't be sitting inside of that content. And chances are the backend framework that you're using has a library to handle that. This is very important. By default, when we spit out content in this way, Vue's actually going to protect us, which is why we're getting that B tag there. Same if we were to add a script tag. If I were to say script and then close that off and then say, for example, alert something, that's not actually going to work. And look, honestly, we do actually get a little bit of extra help here. So notice that we're using v-html and it still isn't taking in that script tag. So the browser does try and help us a little bit there, but it is very important that if you're saving this on the back end, you're protecting yourself from XSS attacks. So take some time to understand what that's all about if you don't know about cross-site scripting attacks, and we'll move on in this video. I can probably get rid of these for now. Save it, and let's dive into the QEditor component. First, let's take a look at definitions. So if I come in here and say definitions, this is basically where we can start defining these buttons that we get at the top here. And that's going to be an object. So let's see if we can redefine bold and start customizing it a little bit. Well, I can come in here and say bold, and then I can give it a label. So the label is going to be equal to bold. Let's save that. And notice that we get an icon and the label bold now. We can also come in here and say icon and set that equal to null. And by setting that to null, we are no longer going to get that icon. We can also come in here and say the tip. So notice that when I hover over this, I get this tooltip, bold. We can change that to something like make it bold. Please save that. And now when we hover over it, we get that tooltip. So that's the basics of changing the definitions, basically changing the way that all of this is displayed. But of course, later on in this screencast, you're going to see a few other things that we can do to customize it even further. Okay, so let's have a look at changing what shows up in the toolbar itself. If I come down here and say toolbar, that's going to be an array. And inside of that, we can have another array, which is going to represent a section. Notice that we've got these little splits in here. That's because every single array within this array is its own section. I'll show you what I mean. How about we add in here bold. We'll also add italic and underline. These are all mentioned in the doc, so you can see what's available to you. So there we go. Now we've got bold with our customization because of the definitions here, and italic and underline. And just to show you that it works. Let's select all of that and italic, underline, and bold it. Cool. All right, what else can we do? Let's smash through some of the API. We've got here full screen. Let's set that equal to true. And it goes full screen, as easy as that. We've also got a few other things that we can put in the toolbar. I might just close that off here. And let's add in another array for some other things. For example, we've got subscript, we've got HR, which is a horizontal rule. We've got links. So if I save it, those are going to start popping up now. What else have we got? We'll create another section here. And we've also got print. We've also got undo and redo, of course. So that would probably be in its own section. Let's say undo and redo. And we've even got this really cool thing that allows us to see the source. So if I come in here and say view source, save it. There we go. All of these are going to show up now. We've got print. We've got this view source. And that's actually going to show you the source code. So if I say bold this, and then I make it bold, I can control B, by the way. It's got a hotkey for that. Now I can come in and view the source of that, and then we can see the tag. So it's kind of cool that we get that extra flexibility there, especially if you're a coder and you want to use the QEditor component. And by the way, if you're using print, just be aware that sometimes the fonts aren't going to be exactly what they show up in here. You might have to do a little bit of extra work for that. Or I think it might even be related to system fonts. So you can dig a little bit deeper to find out how all of that works. But it kind of goes beyond the scope of this video. Yeah, and as you can see, Quasar has a pretty mind-blowing array of controls we can add to the toolbar by default. And this really is just a sneak peek. So do take the time to look at the docs and find out a lot of the other stuff that you've got available to you. We're going to move on. So we can also add our own custom definitions here. So let's add one in called upload and another one called save. And if I just add them straight in, they're not going to show up by default. We need to actually create our own definition for those. So let's come up here and say upload, and then we can say stuff like this. Tip, upload to cloud. We can add, of course, an icon here, which is going to be cloud underscore upload. We can add inside a label, something like upload, and then we can also add a handler. And so the handler means that when you click on this icon, you'll be able to actually do something. So let's say upload file, and then we can go ahead and implement that functionality down here. So let's say upload file is equal to a function, and for now we'll just console.log. Let's see what we get through here. ... params, and then we can spit them out. This is just a very quick way to see what parameters you're going to have available to you. So there we go, upload file, and we've got that map to the handler for upload. Save it, and let's get rid of save in here. Do a quick page refresh, and there we go. Now we've got upload. And it looks like something's funky. I think I put the wrong thing in there for the icon. There we go, now it's working. So now we've got this upload button, and if I open up the console, that's actually not working when I'm in full screen. So let's come down here, get rid of full screen, and now Control Shift, I might click up there, Control Shift I, let's try upload, and there we go. We've got quite a few things available to us here, and I won't go into it in this video, but it basically allows you to dig a little bit deeper into the editor. So if you want to do more advanced stuff, you get a few things available to you when you click on upload, like the caret, for example, which is going to give you some information like where this cursor is within this HTML element. So that's good to know. All right, what else can we do? Well, before I go on, I quickly want to show you something related to language around the editor. And once again, I'm not going to go deep into this because this will end up being a monster video. But for those of you that need to use language-related stuff, check this out. We'll say import use Quasar. This is how you dig into global Quasar-related stuff using the composition API. And we're going to import that from Quasar. Now, $Q is equal to use Quasar. Now, let's do a console.log here. And there's something that I want to quickly point out to you related to language. So once you've set up all your language-related stuff, if you jump into $Q, which is what I've just logged here, and then lang, and then if we jump into target, editor, this is all the language-related stuff for the editor component. And one of the reasons we have all of this available to us is so that we can start mapping these icons, the labels, all that kind of stuff to the editor component. Let me just do a quick example of that. Let's find bold. There it is there. We've got bold. So if I come up here, here's bold. Let's set the icon to $q.lang.editor.bold. Oh, sorry, that's not the icon. That's meant to be the label. So let me just copy that and undo what I just wrote in there. And we'll set the label equal to whatever our current language is for the editor for the bold definition there. All right, so if I refresh the page, notice that's still going to work. So this is probably a wiser way to do it so that your application is ready for translating in the future, if that's important to you. Okay, moving on. So I'm going to close out of that. And if we come down to the toolbar here, let's have a look at some other things that we can do. If I come down here and add another array, so I'll have to put the comma in there, set this up properly, we can actually have a menu inside of here. So if I put an object in there and set the label equal to style, for example, we can then set an icon equal to filter_1 or whatever icon you desire. And let's say options is equal to bold, italic, strike, and underline. And I might get rid of these here. So let's save that. And notice now they're all sitting within a menu. How cool is that? And we don't have that bold icon because remember, we actually removed it up here when we did our definition. So I might get rid of that, save it, and now we've got that again. But it turns out we've even got more flexibility here. I'll give you an example. So if I say my text, select all of that, and then select bold, notice that the text here changes to the word bold and an icon of B. Maybe you don't want that text to change. So maybe you still want to know or you want to communicate to the user that it is a style menu. I'll show you what I mean again. Notice that it says bold and has a capital B there. If I get rid of that and then unbold it, so let's click on that again, or I might have to do some text and unbold it. Yeah, there we go. Notice that now we get style with that icon again. What we can do is we can say fixed label is equal to true. Now I like this because it means that I can say, for example, bold, make it bold, but we've still got the word style in there. The label is fixed. The label itself does not change. This is good because it communicates that this is a menu for the styles. So I like to add fixed label there. Another thing we can say is fixed icon as well. So now, if I say bold here once again, and then I make it bold, it's going to bold it, but we can't really tell in the menu here because the label and the icon are both fixed to these style-related label and icons. So therefore, I think the best thing to do is have a fixed label, but not a fixed icon, or at least one or the other. To me, this is the best effect. So I can then say bold, make it bold. I can tell it's bold because it's got the B there for the icon, and I can tell that this is a style menu because of the label. So that's just a couple of extra things that we have access to with the editor. All right, let's have some fun with this. It's time to go into some of the styling available to us. Let's say content-class if we want to change the content class, and we can set that, for example, to background pink 2. Let's make a Barbie editor. There we go. So now we've got a pink background, and we've got a whole bunch of classes like toolbar background, and we can set that to gray-9, for example, to sort of gray this background here. That kind of ruins the text. So let's say toolbar-color and set that equal to pink-2. And now when you set the toolbar color, the buttons and the text are going to change to this pink color here, but not in the menu. All right, so notice that this is all pink, but inside of the menu, we still have those same old colors. If you want to change the color for the menu as well, you can say toolbar-text-color. Now, these are all pink, and if I click on the menu, everything inside of there is also pink. So just like a little finer detail that you might want to know about. We could also change the toggle color. So if I say toolbar-toggle color, we can set that to sort of a darker pink so we can see if things are toggled. And now I can say, make me italic, select that, and if we go italic here and then open up that menu, we can see that it's got a different styling there. Same with these other things like our subscript as well. Just makes it a little bit easier to see that that has been toggled, and you can choose whatever color you like there. We can also change the styling of the buttons inside of the toolbar. So if we say toolbar-outline, and notice that I'm using the same language here as we do with a Q button component, because these are Q button components under the hood. So basically we're saying here, I want you to use outline buttons. Save it, and now it uses outline, which I think looks a little bit crappy, but hey, you might like it. We can say push there. This kind of gives it a really nice feel. I actually like that. I think that works really well. You could say, for example, rounded to round off the edges of those buttons. And now if you hover over them, you can see they're kind of circular. You've got other stuff like saying flat here. So if we say flat, that's basically going to flatten this entire component. It's kind of hard to tell, so do this on your own computer, set flat on and off to see the difference. We can say square. So notice our curved edges here. We can square those off. We can change the height. And this is going to change the inner height. So not the height of the entire editor, just the height of this content area. So if we set that to something like 700 pixels, that's going to work. And once again, if I go Control-Shift-I here, and we look at the height, yeah, there we go. It's showing 700 pixels. It's not for the entire thing, just for this content area. So that's good to know. What else have we got? We've also got a min height. So we can set that to something like 500 pixels, and I might remove this here and save it. And then you can say, for example, a max height, and let's set that equal to 80 pixels. And of course, this isn't going to work because min height wins in this scenario. But if I get rid of min height now, notice that it still actually isn't working. And that's because by default, Quasar's editor component has a minimum height. So I'll have to come in and set a max height and a min height equal to something like 20 pixels. And now that's going to work. And in this case, you might want to also set the min height to 80 pixels. Yeah, if you want to get a little bit more specific of the height of the editor component. So let's simplify a little bit here. I might remove this drop-down menu, bring us back to a more basic example, save it. Next, let's take a look at using slots. Now, there's two very important rules to understand before you start trying to use slots. First of all, it cannot be one of the definitions. So I cannot do an upload slot. You either say what it is using a definition, which is much easier, and if you can, I would just do it this way, or you do it using a slot. So that's the first rule. The second rule is it can't be one of the predefined definitions. So for example, subscript, HR, link, all of these ones that are predefined by Quasar, you cannot use a slot for them. So let me give you an example of this. If I try and say template, and let's say I'm going to try and overwrite subscript. If I say hashtag subscript, add a div in there and then say test, it should not work. Refresh the page, and it doesn't work because I'm overriding one of the defaults. Next, if I come up here to our upload definition and try and override that, once again, this should not work. Save it, refresh the page, and it doesn't work because if it's already defined here, it's not going to work as a slot. However, if I remove this entirely, save it, now it's going to work. Okay, so it has to appear in the toolbar, and it cannot appear in the definition, and it cannot be one of the defaults. That's why this is now working. And if I got rid of it from the toolbar, it would disappear again. All right, so hopefully all of that makes sense. That kind of fooled me a little bit in the beginning, so it's kind of an important thing to know. And then you'd probably come in here and you'd say Q-icon, or maybe not an icon, let's say Q-button. Let's just use a cloud_upload icon there. I think that's the one. And there we go. And obviously you're going to want to do some styling around this, like flat, set the size equal to small. You probably want to make it dense as well to make sure it fits. And there we go. Now that's working properly. And of course, you then have to implement a lot of the colors and all of that kind of stuff as well. So that's why it is better to do it as a definition if you can. However, just know that option of using slots is available to you. Okay, moving on. Closing that out. Actually, there's one cool one that I missed before, and that's full screen. So I showed you that we can go full screen and set that equal to true. That's going to work. But what if we want a button so that we can toggle full screen on and off? Let's copy that word, full screen, and then I'll just add it in here. Full screen, save it, and there we go. We get a full screen button. How cool is that? And I'll get rid of upload because we're not using that anymore. We can also put in a placeholder. So we can say placeholder, type here, ... save it, and there we go. The placeholder is going to work. We can also set it to read only. And there's a couple of smart things that Quasar has done here with read only. So I can't change the text, and a lot of these buttons are not going to work. But some of them, like the view source button, do work. And the print button also works. So it is still read only, but you can read the source if you would like, and you can print it off so that you could still read it if you like as well. So that's kind of cool, where Quasar's basically thought, all right, it's read-only. What buttons actually make sense for read-only and what buttons don't? So I really like that. And another thing we have that's very similar to read-only is disable. And basically, if you look at the theming here, when I save that, disable basically just gives us this different mouse icon, and it also just kind of blurs things out. But once again, you can still view the source, and you can still print it if you like when it's disabled. So that's a couple of other cool things that you can do. Next, let's take a look at fonts. So if I come in here and say fonts is equal to, and we give that an object, we can now define some fonts. And the way fonts are done is really cool. If I say Arial here, we set that to the Arial font. Then let's add a couple of other ones. Arial_black. I'm just stealing this directly from the docs. And that's going to be Arial black. And then let's also do Comic_Sans. Now, I think some of these actually won't work on my computer because I'm using Linux. Comic Sans MS, yeah, that's probably not going to work for me because I don't have some of these fonts. But now, what we can do is come up here and then add in these labels. So let's try Arial, Arial Black, and Comic Sans. Arial, Arial Black, Comic Sans. Save it, and there we go. They show up. We can say test this now, and that's going to allow us to change the font. And I don't think Comic Sans will work for me. Nah, it doesn't. But there we go. That's pretty cool. And as you can imagine, this would probably make more sense in a menu. So this is where you would use an object here and then make all of those menu items inside of that object. So we talked about that later, so I'll leave that one for now. So that's just about it for this video. Once again, I just want to point out, I've only scratched the surface here. There's actually a whole bunch of advanced stuff you can start doing. So for example, we've got run command. In fact, I'll quickly show you that. Let's say ref is equal to editor. And now if I come down here and say const editor is equal to a ref, and then expose that on the template, save it. Let's now come up here and create a button, Q-button, and let's say @click is equal to handle clicked. And then I'll just come down here, and then we'll say, let's get rid of all that. Const handle clicked is equal to a function, and I'm basically going to console.log all of the params like what I did before. So let's just copy this here, paste, paste, save it, and I'll have to expose that on the template. Give that a save. And what am I missing here? Oh, I need to get rid of that. Okay, let's refresh the page and see if this works. Okay, so we've got a button here. Well, let's open up the console and click that button. And what I actually want to see is this reference to the editor. So let's console.log the editor, not params. That was a bit silly of me. So editor.value, save it. And now let's close this out. Click on that button. And there we go. Now we've got a reference to our editor. And if I come down here, yeah, we've got this run command. And basically, that allows you to go one level deeper onto the div itself. I think this is an editable div, and you can start running commands on that. So I'll be honest, I've never felt the need to go that deep into this, but if you ever want to go a little bit deeper into the functionality of the editor component, you might want to take a look at run command. Just do a quick Google search of mdn space exec command. In fact, I'll show you that here. If you search for mdn space exec command, that's going to show you all of the commands that you have available to you if you want to go a little bit lower level. All right, so there's that. I just wanted to point you in the right direction there if you need to do something more advanced. Another thing I want to point out is something related to images. So pasting and drag dropping images is unfortunately different across browsers. So due to the many inconsistencies here, Quasar leaves it up to the developer to handle sort of pasting, dragging, and dropping of images in the QEditor component. So keep that in mind. Adding images with drag and drop or paste is possible, but does go beyond the scope of this video. I mean, if you can imagine trying to write the code for this on Cordova, Capacitor, and all those other different devices and handling all of those edge cases, it just goes way beyond the scope of Quasar, and maintaining that would just be a nightmare. So we do leave it up to the developer to handle stuff like dragging and dropping of images. And one more thing I'll quickly point out is plain text pasting. So when you're pasting things from something like Microsoft Word. So it includes formatting by default when you're using the editor component. But if you see the docs, they actually have an example of how you can strip out the formatting. So I don't know if it'll happen here. Let's try copy pasting that. Yeah, notice that I get a whole bunch of this formatting by default. What you can actually do is set it up so that when you paste it in there, it removes all of that formatting. So if you're interested, check out the docs and they'll show you some code so that you can actually get that happening in your editor component. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this one. I certainly enjoyed making it for you. This is a monster component and it's got some really, really cool stuff that you get out of the box. So check it out, use it in your projects where it makes sense, and I'll see you in another video.